Thursday evening chat. We are going to be discussing survival mode. Hmm. I will survive. We're all going to survive this homeschool experience. We're going to get along for sure.
We need some friends to join us.
We have some friends joining us. Let them join.
Hi, friends. Friends, we have a special treat. I'm not sure if you guys saw that we posted looking for counselor volunteers earlier today. And we were lucky enough to actually be able to recruit the first volunteer on that thread. We're here with Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hey, guys. Hey, Dee. Hey, Delise.
Hey.
So Laura is actually a school counselor. So she's coming with experience. We felt like it was good to have somebody that is actually trained to deal with these kind of matters and can be give us some professional advice. Laura is actually a licensed, certified professional school counselor in New Jersey. And she has a special interest in trauma-informed schools and trauma resiliency. She's been a public school educator for 22 years now, and she also is a former teacher. She taught both first and second grade and is currently an elementary school counselor for over 550 students. Her counseling experience includes high school and elementary, so she's well covered. Additionally, she volunteers for her local Traumatic Loss Coalition, which is an organization that goes into schools and youth serving organizations in the aftermath of tragic losses. And that provides them grief and stabilization services to both the students and the staff. She's trained in psychology, first aid, and suicide assessment. She is the current vice president and past president of her local county's Elementary Counselors Association in South Jersey. Laura also is a licensed educational supervisor in New Jersey, and she has children of her own, both a junior in high school and a seventh grader. She and her husband are also licensed foster parents to little ones from time to time. So Laura is a perfect person to kind of get into this discussion with us because she has a heart for children. And I think she'll be able to assist us in trying to gather how we can handle some of the things that our kids might be experiencing right now.
Yes, welcome, Laura.
Thank you. So I know I wrote that bio, but you make me sound like really important. So,
it's the pearls. You came with the pearls too. The pearls. The bio has to live up to the pearls.
I love pearls.
Yes. So feel free to start. We have some canned questions. We have some canned questions, but feel free to post some questions in the comments, and we'll pick a couple to actually ask Laura. Take it over, Delise.
So first I want to say hi to Stacy, who's on, Ashley's on, Doreen is on. We want to say hi to them. Thanks for joining us. There's 9 other folks, but they're not telling me who you are on here. And so want to say hey to the folks who are joining us tonight. I see the numbers are going up. So hi, everyone. Laura, we're so happy that you're here to talk with us. When we were talking about, initially, brainstorming this whole idea for tonight, we were talking about literally survival. We started with that song, that folks are really, they've been thrown and thrust into this. And we're really in survival mode. Teachers weren't given, notice that they were going to have to, create online, curriculums. Schools, were shut down with short notice. Families were brought home, having to, with little notice as well. And so all of us are really in this survival mode. And a lot of what we've talked about, has been, how do we as parents deal with this? But, we really wanted to also talk about how do the children deal with this? How are the children dealing and, or how do we help our children deal and cope with this transition? How do we help our children deal and cope with the trauma of, all the stuff they're hearing around us, or even don't understand? My kids keep asking, like, I don't understand why I can't just go outside. Why are you spraying me down with Lysol every time I walk back in the house? And so we want to really spend some time, talking a little bit about that. And so I guess I just wanted to just start with, just generally about the coronavirus and, coping strategies. How do we engage in those kinds of conversations? How would you recommend we engage in the conversations around the why we're in the house?
Right. So you touched on so many things that I really wanted to talk about tonight. Give me just 1 second. Can you turn the oven down, honey? Because I don't want your burgers to burn. I am so sorry.
Working while parenting.
And one of the things that you touched on that was really important was that we're all in survival mode, me included. I've been an educator for many, many years. I've been a school counselor for years. I do have a special interest in trauma, and that encouraged me, along with a good friend of mine at work, to seek out some volunteer work with trauma information, right? Because trauma-informed schools is the wave of the future, if you want to say. So I think the most important thing to remember is to, number one, we have to ground ourselves and remember that most people just don't like change. We are creatures of habit, and change makes us nervous, right? But when change happens suddenly, that nervousness and that worry can sometimes elevate to anxiety, and that pushes us out of our comfort zone. Once we get out of our comfort zone, things start to go a little haywire with, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone. What's within my circle of control? And that's one of the other things that I wanted to talk about. So to your point, how do we deal with the children? Obviously, it's all going to depend on their age, right? The most important thing for me is to remind my children and myself, actually, what is my circle of control? What is outside of my circle of control? And when things happen that are outside of my circle of control, like schools closing because of coronavirus and my favorite gym closing and I can't go here, I can't go there, is to just remember that you need to pull in those coping strategies at that time. And you need to teach your child the right coping strategies, right? So I am sure that after we've all had a rough day at work, we might pour a glass of wine. Obviously, we can't do that with our kids, right? But keeping that open line of communication and reminding them, teaching them specific skills and coping strategies and self-regulation is going to get them to a point where they might not need to come to mommy anymore when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, because they already have that bank of coping skills that they can pull from, right? And so I'm in an interesting position because I'm a school counselor. I've been a teacher. I have a 16-year-old and I also have a 12-year-old. And my 12-year-old, we play a lot of board games yesterday, and I told them they can take a break. I hear you. I told them they could take a break from their schoolwork when they need to. We're going to work from 8:30 to 10:30. Then we'll take an hour mental health break, and then we'll work from 12:30 to 2:30. Now, the teenager, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him since Monday. I don't know where he is. I think he still lives here. He was out for a couple hours riding his bike yesterday. And before he left, he said to me, I can't be in the house all day. I really need to get outside of the house and just get some fresh air and some exercise. So he has that bank of coping skills. Lucky for him, his mom is, a school counselor and has been an educator. He's just kind of a low-key guy anyway. But my little guy, he has a bank of coping skills, but I'm in my office working, right? And he's in there a lot. He's back and forth, and I need help with math. And that's where I have to go into survival mode and pull in my coping strategies. Take a deep breath, stop my work, and go help him with his math problem. Or not help him with his math problem and say, listen, when your math lesson is over, bring it to me, show me what you've done, and then we can correct it. We have to really keep that open line of communication with students without lording over them with everything they do. And I'll tell you another important point that my son taught me on Monday. Like I said, I ain't seen him since Monday. He was a little bit frustrated, and he said, why do I have to show you my assignments? It's in Google Classroom. I'm submitting it. I'm going to use this time home. Again, he uses his bank of coping strategies. I'm going to use this time home to do really well and boost my grades up. And I'm like, I need to see it. I need to know what you're doing. You're off schedule. And he stopped me and he said, Mom, I just need to know why you're going so hard with this.
Wow.
Right? Because, and I know you guys can't see my visual back there, but I made a visual of what's in our circle of control, what's outside of our circle of control. And again, when those things that are outside of our circle of control come in suddenly, we have a tendency to go haywire and freak out. And that's why I was going so hard with it. But he grounded me and he said, why are you going so hard with this? So I had to take a step back and I had to remind myself, school closing is not within my circle of control. Neither are his Google Classroom assignments. Neither are what his teacher decides to do or how she or he decides to grade those assignments. So, I will say for me in survival mode, it's also important to back up, ground myself, and put more coping strategies in, which I'll get to in a little while. So I just want to stop right there because I know you guys there's more people that have questions and I've been talking quite a bit.
I wanted to ask you a question, Laura, because you mentioned the term self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us that may not be familiar, I'm assuming your circle of control is part of that self-regulation. Can you expand more upon what self-regulation actually is?
Hold on a sec. Dee, can you say that again? Because my husband just walked in and Ozias's burgers are like halfway done. So
no problem. So the term self-regulation, can you expound upon that a little more? All of us may not be familiar with what self-regulation is and how it's related to other terms you're using, like that circle of control.
Right. So self-regulation is, if you want to sort of look at it like an umbrella, it's this idea that when our emotions get really strong or our emotions get really, not necessarily out of control, but such to where you don't feel like yourself, your coping strategies are a little, I like to think they're under that umbrella. And that's sort of what you use in order to regulate yourself. So for example, I have this little friend that I work with, and this little friend gets really, really angry over things that you and I think are small. But, everything's relative. When you're 7 or 8 and somebody steals your favorite smelly markers, that's a big deal. For me, that would be like somebody stealing my car. And so my little friend, he has a really difficult time self-regulating when something happens like that. He has a tantrum and he may throw things, he may flip a desk, simply because he hasn't been taught those coping strategies. So once you have a really solid bank of coping strategies, your self-regulation comes into play there. You know how to do it without the teacher having to regulate you or your principal having to discipline you so that you can be regulated in a way that you're not interrupting the educational process for the rest of the students, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to say hey to Lakeisha, Chebby, Shanita, Keisha. I'm going to mess up names, but Desiree. That's what I'm going to go with. Desiree and others who have joined us with Laura, who we mentioned earlier is a school counselor, specialist in school trauma, rocking the pearls tonight. And
somebody wants to say hi. Come here.
And balancing her 2 kids as well, who during this time trying to get everybody straight for the evening. So you mentioned a circle of control, and so what we'll do is after when we're done, we'll post. We'll put that visual in some kind of way so that we can post it onto the site.
Okay.
But I'm curious about some of those things that you were saying were inside of that circle of control.
Okay, so excuse my back because I'm going to turn around and take a look at my visual. And like I had shared with you guys earlier, I am actually going to use this for a lesson that I'll record tomorrow for my students. So again, you can't see it, right? But so inside of my circle of control is things that I actually can do. And I can decide to do them or I can decide not to do them. For example, dinner. I have a choice in what I'm going to have for dinner. I want to have a burger. That's what I'm going to have. Who I decide to text. Working hard, listening, being kind to other people. Those are things that I can choose to do or choose not to do. But when you take a look at what's outside of your circle of control, we've got weather, right? There's absolutely nothing we can do about that. And so what I try to teach my little ones at work and at home also is that it's almost pointless and illogical for you to get upset that you can't go outside and ride your bike because it's snowing. There's absolutely nothing that can be done about that. It might make you mad, you might have a tantrum, but that's when you're going to need to self-regulate use your coping strategies to put yourself in a more comfortable place. Because again, things that are outside of your circle of control, you have no control over. So another idea here I have is what others say. I can't control what others say about me. I can't control how others feel, other people's choices, what others think about me. And the one that I put up here, let me move my laptop, is this one here, right? I cannot control school closing. None of us had any control over coronavirus, how it came here. We can do the best that we can do to stop it. We can wash our hands. We can even wear a mask if we have coronavirus. We can stop touching our faces. We can take medicine. But the fact that school is closed is a fact that we can't do anything about. We cannot all walk into our children's school and demand that they open and teachers be there and we teach them. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to manage, is this worrying or is this anxiety? Am I worried because school is closed, or am I anxious because school is closed? Because if I'm worried, that's a little bit normal. I think every parent right now is a little bit worried. I might not do well at homeschooling. I'm worried that my child's grades might drop. But if you become so worried and your mindset is such that my kid is going to fail every class this year because I'm not going to be a good teacher, that's when anxiety is starting to kick in, right? And maybe you can't sleep because you have anxiety about how well you're doing with homeschooling. Or maybe you don't even want to do the things that you would normally do to comfort yourself when you're at home on, say, a snow day, or you're at home in the summer with your children. And so about anxiety, it's usually irrational. It's usually not logical. And again, it stops you from doing the things that you would normally do. But you have to recognize that that anxiety is connected to something that's not within your control.
So I don't see any questions being posted on the live feed. Do you guys? I'm just peeping in.
I don't see a question yet because I feel like Laura is just like educating, and if it was me, I'd just be writing everything down you're saying. You know, I'm like, oh,
be sure to ask. So I do have a question because I do have a son who has a high level of anxiety and does not handle change very well. How can I help him develop that toolbox of coping skills? He's just used to things just being the same, and as soon as something changes, like the whole world kind of crumbles. So how do we help our kids develop those coping skills that they need to actually kind of adjust to these kind of changes?
So what I like to tell parents that I talk to is don't play dodgeball with your kid. In other words, don't throw the 10 coping strategies that we're going to talk about tonight. Where are my notes? The 8, 10 strategies. Don't throw them all at him at one time, because what we do know is that in order to learn a skill, a child needs at least 30 successful repeated exposures to that particular skill. And the same thing applies to coping skills. But depending on his age, you might need to teach him exactly what is happening. You might need to teach him, listen, you're worried, but this is a little bit more than worry because things change. It's a part of life. It's going to happen all the time. I don't like it either. Mommy doesn't like it either. But here's how we deal with it. So the first thing I want you to do is blank, right? And then you give him that coping skill. And then every single time he has a change that he doesn't like or a change that he gets upset about, you're going to work on that one coping skill until you see him not needing you using that coping skill. That's not going to happen this month. It's not going to happen next month or probably by next year, right? And so that's when you start to build. Once you see him using that coping skill without you, that's when you start to build and give them more. But and so to that point, exactly what anxiety is, I have another visual for you guys. So
the school counselor come through with the visual.
And again, I'm not going to hold this up here, but depending on the age, I think it's really important. Once kids know exactly what their anxiety and their worry is, it gives them a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more of a sense of control, if you will, over what's happening in their body. So they need to know that something might happen, right? It's a thought, or it might be something that you see. And your brain is either recognizing that as a threat or it's perceiving it as a threat, right? Because everything is not a big scary animal. Everything is not a bear or a lion. And what happens is there's a really important part of our brain called the amygdala. It's the part that controls all of our emotions. It's the part that controls our self-regulation, our coping skills, our executive functioning skills. And when your amygdala senses that danger, it puts your body into a mode to release hormones to protect yourself. And now your body's in protective mode. So your heart rate increases, you're breathing faster, your face is red, your palms are sweaty. But the problem is when you're repeatedly perceiving things as threats that aren't really threats, and it becomes anxiety, your body is now constantly in a state of protective mode when it doesn't need to be. And that has really far-reaching effects on your, not just your mental health, but your physical health as well. And so that's when your coping strategies come in. So I'm gonna actually hold this up again in case anybody wants to see it. So
we'll take a screenshot of it and put it on the page too.
Actually, hang on a second, because I think this might be copyrighted.
Oh, we'll figure it out.
And it is, however, I can still share the information in another way.
Okay.
I could email it to you in my own words, but just because I'm also an author on teacherspayteachers.com, I don't like to share.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but again, it's basically a pathway to anxiety. There's a perceived threat. Your brain goes into, your amygdala opens up, freaks out, goes into protective mode, and makes all these physical things happen with your body. So back to my point, once the kids recognize that this is anxiety, that's when it becomes easier for them to use coping skills. Because when you're here and you're not recognizing, your brain is not recognizing that this is a perceived threat, right? They get upset and you can't calm them down. And any child, any adult really, who's in the midst of an amygdala storm, it is a complete and total waste of your breath and time to try to reason with them. Every one of us has had a 2-year-old who's had a tantrum, right?
Yeah.
Or a niece or a nephew or a student who's had a tantrum. And you're talking to them, and they're still screaming because they don't hear you. And their brain is not in a position to hear you or receive anything that you're saying. So what we have to do when they get there, particularly with anxiety, is to give them a task that doesn't require their brain to do a lot of work. Do we have any questions?
Not yet, but I'd love for you to kind of, you were heading right into the, how do we, or what do we do when those anxieties and threats come up, when we see our kids starting to spiral? Or, and what are some of those calming strategies or coping strategies? I want to start with your first 2 that you have on here. So we have yoga and dance. I will say that I felt like when our family got a chance to dance with Debbie yesterday, it really changed the dynamic in the house. We had been trying to get through schoolwork, trying to organize ourselves, trying to deal with groceries, whatever it was. And taking that break to just do some dancing with her and laugh together as a family, it really improved the mood in the house. And so can you talk a little bit about dance and yoga as coping strategies?
Absolutely. So if you've ever been to a dance class or a Zumba class, even if you're not a dancer, even if you can't hold a beat, it feels good, right? Because the music is making your brain work and you're thinking so hard about what step is next and where do I go? Or even if it's not a Zumba class, you might just be really feeling that music. Music has a way of really just making people calm. Even if it's crazy music that you love to dance to. Hey, do you want to come say hi? That's the teenager. Again, haven't seen him since Monday. He came down for a burger and now he's gone. But there's always a feel-good feeling after a dance class or after just dancing in your living room, because what gets released when you start to exercise?
Yeah, those endorphins.
Exactly. And they're there for a reason. They're like your natural antidepressant, and it's important to do that. Obviously, if you don't like to dance, you can do yoga. I stink at yoga. I'm not very flexible at all. But I will tell you, when I go to yoga and the lights are out and the instructor she's just speaking so calmly, it has a calming effect on me also. It almost feels like I've had a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids take Taekwondo, and I think that will probably be used in a similar way as just a calming, hey, you why don't you go practice, your stances for a little while. That probably would also bring them down. So that's probably a tool the kids already have in their toolbox, but don't use it in that kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I want to say hey to Stephanie and to Tanisha and Maura and Nicole. Please post your questions that you may have about, how to help our children cope during this time.
So it looks like the next two strategies, and maybe the third one's related to the first two, is the deep breathing exercises and exercise.
Yeah, so the deep breathing exercises that I like to teach my students are a little bit different than the dancing and yoga. So what I tell my students is, when you deep breathe, it's not this. That doesn't do anything for you, but make you have an asthma attack if you have asthma. So it's 1, 2, 3 in, and then you pause, and then it's 1, 2, 3 out, and you pause. So it looks like this. And I always tell my students also, you're not trying to blow out birthday candles, but you're trying to cool down your hot chocolate. So imagine that you have hot chocolate with marshmallows and you like to watch them float around your cup. You're just trying to cool it down very gently. You don't want it to be extremely cold, but you don't want it to stay too hot. So you just want to breathe in for 3 or 5, depending on what your lungs can do. Hold it for just 1 second and then breathe out very slowly. It puts more oxygen in your brain. I read that is also has a calming effect. But so about the exercise, it doesn't always have to be something really intense where you're bending or you're sweating profusely or you're doing CrossFit. If you just take a walk, you're getting outside, you're getting your vitamin D from the sun, you're getting fresh air, and more than likely you'll be with somebody who you care about and you love. So you're building those connections also. Right now, all of us, when we're outside, we're riding bikes or we're walking, we're with our kids, right? So that has so many more benefits than just taking a walk and just clearing your head. You're spending time with your kids. You're creating those core memories that are really important for the kids, and also really important for them to gain a sense of self-esteem. Yes. That spending that time together is a really good coping strategy too.
Absolutely. Hey, Nicole, other Nicole. We got 2 Nicoles online. Okay. I will say number 5, make sure you're eating healthy and hydrated. So I have eating alarms. So that's what's happening with mommy. However, my children are seeming to eat out of house and home right about now.
Yeah, all the time.
And especially being in the house, they're constantly eating. And I will say that, I think that I've used some coping mechanisms that might not be helpful. For example, I'll go and say, we live above a Whole Foods. So I'm like, let's go get some real chips at the CVS, because we need some Doritos. Can't find no Doritos. And so, I'm like, let's go get some Doritos. We had like a bag of Funyuns, the little bags. Can you see the little bags? But I think that I love that you're reinforcing healthy eating, because I don't use food and those kind of foods as treats. But I was thinking on our walk, I was like, let's grab some of those types of things. And so talk more about how healthy eating and hydration, helps us with these coping mechanisms, because some people use it in the way that I've been using it recently.
Yeah. So, you just feel better when you eat better, right? When you have your fruits and vegetables, I just feel a whole lot better. And one of the things I've been doing lately, especially for Zai, for Osco too, is I'm just making them fresh grapefruit, because we all need that vitamin C. We need our citrus fruits right now. And I don't know many people who like to eat grapefruit without sprinkling sugar on top. So I'm just squeezing them. I have a juicer, squeezing them their fresh grapefruit. I do put a little bit of a little bit of sugar in it for them, dilute it with some water, and it's helping them get their hydration and their vitamin C every day. This is one of those things, Delise, that it's like, do as I say, not as I do, because I had so many Lays today. We're having burgers and fries for dinner. And I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress.
We all are. Yeah.
Yeah. But I vowed that tomorrow I'll get up and I'll make them eggs, and we'll have avocado toast, and I'll make them that fresh grapefruit or orange juice.
Yeah.
But when I eat poorly, I feel so sluggish. And when I feel sluggish, I'm tired. And when you get tired, you don't want to do anything like exercise.
Right.
Like spend time with your family, right? All those feel-good things that we need to keep our spirits up, especially right now when we're all trapped in the house.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of posts where families are saying that they're able to do more. They're able to cook more at home. They're eating more in the house versus eating out. And so I think it seems like this quarantining is causing, is causing families to, unintentionally, be able to eat more healthy as well.
Yeah. So my husband just brought me dinner. He's so sweet.
The burger?
He brought me a burger. So that's one of those, we know the right thing. We just have to practice it.
Moderation. Everything in moderation.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So we will have our fresh grapefruit juice tomorrow morning.
So Laura, I actually have a question, because everybody's talking about how their kids are eating out of house and home. And normally with my 3 boys, that's how it is. But we've actually had a shift in our household where I feel like they aren't snacking like they usually do. Like, they are not snacking at all. Like, they're not going in the pantry and getting anything. So I'm like, is that the way that they're coping with the change? Because normally I can't keep them out of the pantry. But right now, it's like during school hours, they don't ask for anything. They actually opted out of having lunch today.
Oh, wow.
Well, your kids are an anomaly, because I don't even know how to respond to that, because my children I shop at Sam's Club.
Me too.
And I could buy a big case of Cheez-Its and it's gone in 48 hours. My kids just
usually is.
They just eat. But I don't know. But here's the thing, though. Have you asked them?
I have not. I've been breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm making sure that they eat. I haven't worried so much about the snacking in between that they usually do. Mm-hmm. But especially like the 12-year-old, he would often, he was like a bottomless pit. And now he's really not doing like he usually is. So I don't know, maybe that's how he's, normally we're not home all day. Normally it's like you come in from school and you're hitting up all kinds of snacks. So maybe now that things are available, he doesn't desire it as much because he can see it and have access to it all day.
Excuse me. And it could be, they're not as active because they're in the house. At school, you're walking back and forth to classes and the teachers have you up and around every 40 minutes. So there's that too. But to my first point, sometimes we forget as parents and educators that children are little people with real feelings and real ideas, and they have a lot to bring to the table. So I think asking them is really important. Why aren't you guys hungry? Are you sad? Do you miss your friends? And have those open conversations and that open dialogue with them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to do that. And then you'll have to send me some Sam's Club food.
If I had any left, I would send it to you. Today, I think, hey, Osco, not you, the little one, little Osco, how many ramens did you have today? He says it was 2, but the bowl was about this big and it was filled up. And I do not usually let my kids have ramen noodles, but that's one of those things, like I need to stock up on non-perishables and let me just let them eat whatever they're going to eat.
Yeah.
So the ramen, it was like a big thing. Now it's smaller. I may have to hide it and really push the grapefruits and the little cuties and the oranges.
We have to do that. My mother is here with us. I'm not sure how many of our our surviving homeschool family members have their elderly parents with them, but my mother is with us, and it's very hard for grapefruit to compete with strawberry shortcake. And so those are the kind of things that my mom likes to have in the house. She has pecan twirls. She has donuts, and so it is definitely hard to compete with, against some of those things. So
it is, but that's one of those things. It was within my circle of control because I do the grocery shopping, but I had to let it go at one point because it's like, what's the worst that's really going to happen if I let them have ramen?
Yeah.
Especially because I push healthy eating at other times.
Right.
So
I have yoga. So for those who are just joining us, Laura's a school counselor licensed in trauma therapy and or trauma support, and she's talking to us about coping strategies with our children and ourselves. So we talked about yoga, we talked about dance, deep breathing, exercise, eating healthy and hydrating. And Pat, Carolyn, and Jackie have joined us, and Pat wants to know, what about the tween girls with the attitudes? Help.
Well, hang on a second. I just want to, I'm going to eat it in a second. I got to, I just want to be clear, though, that I'm not licensed in trauma therapy. It's a special interest, and I volunteer in the aftermath of traumatic events. But as far as the tween girls, y'all might have to help out with that because I have boys. We are a boy family. I work with them at work. And honestly, I will tell you that my 6th grade girls are some of my favorite people to work with because together in a group, they can be very out of character. But one-on-one with their school counselor, and therein lies the difference too, right? One-on-one with their school counselor, they're very vulnerable. And that's when they tell me things about what's really going on with them. So the only suggestion that I have for that as a school counselor is make sure that especially now that we're in the house, outside of parents and grandparents, that your child has a list of trusted adults that they can go to if they feel like they can't or don't want to tell you something. That's one of the first things that I talk about with students who come in my office who may have experienced trauma, or maybe they're not even going through a serious trauma that you would need to report, but maybe it's something on a smaller level. Is okay, first let's make a list. Before you go, let's make a list of adults who you trust, who you can go to. Will you promise me that if you can't go to mom or dad, that you'll reach out to these people? Here's your list. I'll keep a copy of it. And I always ask them to check back in with me in a week about that list and who they reached out to. So that might be a good idea.
So I actually have another question. So many of the kids that were, say, in public school up to this point are used to being out of the house, but with their classmates for 6 to 8 hours a day. So many of them are now disconnected from all of their friends. High school, don't worry too much because they exchange phone numbers. So the middle schoolers, but like the elementary school kids who don't have a mode of connecting with their classmates or connecting with their teachers, that adjustment, I think is probably a little more dramatic for that age group. Mm-hmm. What suggestions do you have for, say, a parent of a child that may be a 2nd or 3rd grader that now is maybe feeling loneliness, especially children, families that may be the only child in the house. Siblings have their siblings to play with, but they may be the only child and now they're disconnected from children their age.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that because I was thinking about this earlier. One of my little friends is going through something similar. Only child, not a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and they haven't been connecting. And so I thought we could take it back to the old school. We had pen pals, right? Mm-hmm. We sent postcards, we sent letters. That's a good way to connect. Also, those parents can reach out to the teacher and ask if they have Google Classroom. And if they don't have Google Classroom, can they set up a Google Classroom where the students can maybe do Google Hangouts with permission, or they could maybe do Zoom conferences with their teacher and parents' permission, just so they're still getting face-to-face contact with their peers.
Yeah, I think right now, I know in our case, and I know every district is handling things differently. Mm-hmm. Our teachers are pretty much, they've been told not to conduct any lessons or give any information to parents at this time, that everything is getting funneled down from the district. So there's zero communication with teachers and zero communication with classroom. So in order for to have something like Google Classroom or Zoom utilized, it has to be approved and then funneled down through the school district.
Oh, wow.
So at this point, a lot of I know a lot of it's probably taking place in a lot of different school districts where right now what you're given is a blanket that all second graders or all sixth graders have the same information from the school district and are then, they don't even have any contact with their school or their teacher, the community they've known all these years.
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. But you don't have to be a teacher to have a Google Classroom. You don't have to be a teacher to use Zoom or Canvas or any of those other different ways to connect. You can set up a Google Classroom, and we could do this conference in, a Google Classroom. You can post videos there. You can communicate. It's very similar to texting or using email. It's almost like a Facebook for classrooms. 1 second, I need to mute myself.
But you know what, Laura was
multitasking.
Yeah, Dee, we had
I'm back.
The kids wanted to talk today. My youngest, my middle, who is 9 years old, wanted to talk with her friends today. And another mother contacted me and others via email, and she had set up a Zoom place for them to talk. And it was very interesting because, they stayed on there for hours. It reminded me of, back in the day when we used to get on three-way.
Yeah.
But when we used to get on three-way and then you're like, I gotta go eat, hold on. And then they would go eat. They were doing that. They were literally leaving for half an hour and coming back into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of that, and I don't know, they said that they watched the show together. I don't know all that they were doing, but she came back, definitely, Laura. I can always tell when she is more, her spirits are more high because she's really talkative.
Mm-hmm.
And she came back really talkative and, engaging after that. So I wonder, if not the school classroom, maybe 3 or 4 friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like in this day and age, there are so few people who have social media and cell phones, and even on their Xboxes and PlayStation 4, they can connect with each other that way. It's harder with the little ones, though.
With the little.
They don't always have somebody's phone number, but there's somebody's mom who has somebody's mom's phone number, who has somebody's mom's phone number. That's always the way, right? And, I would even suggest that if there's no way to connect, maybe there's a parent who doesn't have internet access like we do, or maybe they don't have social media, you can always email the teacher. And I know as a teacher, I was always willing to, if someone contacted me and said, hey, can you pass out these birthday cards? Yes, I can. I'll put them in their folders privately, or I'll reach out to this mom for you and ask if it's okay. And in this time right now with the Corona closings and shutdowns, we all have to stick together. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine, I like to think of the good in people. I think everybody is born inherently good. And I can't imagine that there's a teacher in this day and time that would say, no, I'm not going to reach out to those other parents for you. And there's even ways for a teacher to send out an email or a remind message. Hey, if you're willing to let the other parents in the classroom have your phone number, let me know through email, or just, put your initials at the bottom of this email so that you guys can connect. And again, these are tough times, and we have to come up with really creative ways to make sure we keep our kids connected with their friends.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I want to say hey to Kanae. Hi, Peter. Hi, Shelly. Hi, Shalinda. Welcome to the conversation. We're talking with Laura, who's a school counselor, talking about coping strategies. We're curious if you all have any questions, about how, for her, about how your children are coping with this trauma, or any questions about how you can help your child cope with the trauma. Laura's talked about yoga, dance, deep breathing, exercises, as well as exercise like walking. She's talking about healthy eating and hydrating. So I'd love for you, Laura, to talk about the coloring, because we've seen these adult coloring books and things coming out. So I'd love for you to talk about coloring and the grounding technique as your other calming strategies.
Yeah.
Everybody's
So
writing their questions.
what'd you say?
I said, well, everyone's writing their questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking at my sheet, right? I spelled calming wrong because I was typing so fast, but I find coloring is surprisingly calming. And so again, I'm a teacher author for Teachers Pay Teachers. So once this Corona thing sort of blew up, I started creating these different activities for the kids to do that include mandalas in them. And Ozias was laughing at me the other day because I was coloring in a mandala, and I just find that it helps children. It gives nervous children something to do with their hands while you're talking to them. And some people don't even like to color mandalas. They just want to sketch on their own. But when you're putting colors on a page, it does something to your mood, just like that exercise does. The grounding technique is really important. It helps me when I'm having one of those days where I just can't sit down and I haven't had lunch. So what you want to do is, excuse me, that's just my husband. What you want to do is you want to just turn everything off, right? Be in a room with the lights on. If there's noise, there's just noise. That doesn't matter. But you want to take a look around and find 5 things that you see. You don't have to write them down unless you want to. You could even do a daily grounding journal to help you. 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you feel, 2 things that you smell, and maybe 1 thing that you taste. So you're just using all of your senses to be more mindful and be more present. And you're forcing yourself to get away from technology and get away from the news and CNN and everything that we're hearing right now. It's important to turn off your phone when this happens. I have a really, really amazing intern at work right now. And we had a few days where he just looked at me at the end of one day and he said, wow. Because he wasn't expecting elementary school counseling to be so hustle and bustle. We got to get this kid. We have to collaborate with this teacher. We have to stop into the office. We got to call this parent, write this 504, call this auntie and this foster parent about attendance. And it's just a go, 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 go job on so many days, right? So when he came in the next morning, I said, I'm glad you wear your sneakers. It's going to be a go, go, go day. But we're not going to do anything until we do this grounding technique. And so what I was trying to do was teach him that that's a technique that everybody can use. Use it with your students, but you're forcing yourself to look around your present environment and be mindful of exactly what's in your space before you start to go haywire with your day. And when that anxiety kicks in, I'm finding that the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 strategy really helps for me, especially as I'm going to sleep at night. I have a hard time sleeping. My brain is always go, 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 go. Probably have a little bit of adult ADHD, but the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 really helps me calm down at night and relax.
Can you say the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 again?
Yeah, so it doesn't even have to be the same 5, the same 4, the same 3, 2, or 1. So you're just gonna leave your lights on, preferably, so that you can take a look around, find 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can feel, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. If you don't like that, usually when you're in a room by yourself, there's not much to taste unless you're eating. So you could do a 4, 3, 2, 1, or you could do a 3, 2, 1. As long as you're just practicing being mindful and present and focusing your brain on calming down, it can be helpful.
Thanks.
So that was
those messages, Dee?
What's that? Messages?
You see the messages?
Do I see messages?
Yeah, Shelly was talking about that her youngest had a Zoom meetup with her classmates today. They shared a fun thing they did, I guess, that day. And they also had a dance spotlight, and they ended by sharing their pets, which is really cute. She has a young
cute. I need to put my 2nd grader in on that Zoom with your class, her classmates.
Yes. Yes, send that over.
Yeah, send me the invite.
She also said that she does, she sets intentions every day, every morning. And so that's something that she does as well. And, and Shalinda said that she set up a Zoom meeting with her two friends last night. And that she enjoyed hosting the meeting. And they ended by scheduling a 10 o'clock meeting to practice and sing their Spanish songs, and they're enjoying the bonding time. And she's getting in more exercise as well by taking daily walks.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like we have to force ourselves to do these things, right? These mindful activities and this exercise. Once I heard about everything that was happening overseas with Corona, and then it started traveling over here, I stopped most of my gym activity, except of course for the classes that I teach, right? I completely stopped it, and I missed that. And I realized I wasn't sleeping better. And my husband's asking me in the morning, hey, how'd you sleep? How you feeling? Kind of cranky this morning. It's because I haven't been to the gym. So I cleared everything out of my office where I work, and I just started doing my Zumba again and just dancing around, because that exercise is key. It is really key. If you have a bike, go for a bike ride. We've been riding bikes, and that's been helping.
Yeah. Shalinda correct to say it was her little girl, not her, that was having doing the play dates. We got you. We understand.
Yeah.
So you're on your list. You're 7. Are we at 7 now? 8. Your 8th technique about being willing to submit to change.
Right.
On that.
Yeah, I think that comes along with the recognition of there is a circle of control, and it is actually very small. There are so many more things that were on my visual that were not on my visual that has fallen off the wall that are just not within our control. And I think once you sort of buy into the idea that there's a circle of control and so many things are outside of them, you have no other choice but to submit to the change and just roll with it and do the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, my 3-year-old yesterday asked me, why did we have to stay home? He doesn't understand the change. Why do we have to stay home? He wanted to go play on the playground. And I was like, oh, you can come play in the backyard. So we gone for a family walk. He was like, well, we got to go to the playground. And there were some other kids at the playground. I'm like, no, we can't go to the playground. Well, why can't I do that? So it's hard trying to explain to a small person why they can't do some of the joyful things that they always enjoy doing up to this point, especially when you can see it, but you can't touch it. But I guess, over time, he'll catch on to the little things, noticing that everybody's at home. It's not just him. It's not a punishment.
Yeah. And I also think, once we're willing to submit to the change and we're willing to roll with it and not freak out, like I did on Monday when I was questioned about why I'm going so hard with this, the kids see that. And what do they usually do, right? They usually follow our lead. And once we start to submit to it and say, hey, this is our new temporary normal, they have no other choice but to fall in line.
It's true.
Yeah. And so to that point, I wanted to move to the next one. If you don't take mental health days, you should take mental health days, right? And just because we're home doesn't mean that we don't need mental health time. If our kids are struggling with something or they're too stressed out, close the computer, turn off those phones, walk away, and just let them chill. Let them vibe. Let them do whatever they want to do. Let them turn up their music. Because if they're doing work or we're working in the midst of stress, we're not good to anybody, especially ourselves. Let them have a half a day. There's been days where we've all been at work, we got sick in the middle of the day and had to go home. Again, we have to remember children are little people. They're little people with real feelings that should be validated and real emotions that should be validated. And if we're just pushing and pushing and pushing them to be on our agenda and on our schedule, we're not doing them any good. We're not doing ourselves any good. And that's an ongoing learning process for me as well.
Me too. I feel like that, Laura. I feel like I remember telling my husband, I remember a transition when I realized they were no longer little robots. Like when I say this, you're supposed to do that. And when I say this, you do that. And you're supposed to do it every single time that I say that. And then I realized, oh, right. Like you're actually a person, right? That has feelings that can be irritable in the daytime and tired at nighttime. That can, I remember that transition, because as a baby, when they're babies, they're not talking, you're really thinking for them, right? You're hungry, I'm going to feed you. It's that time. So it was. I remember the transition of trying to, like, I'm not totally in control of them. They are actual humans and not robots.
Yeah, and it's a tough transition, because I feel like as a parent, we go through that transition once a year. I have a 16-year-old, and he just gets up, puts his coat on. Okay, I'm going to ride my bike. Where? Who? With who? Where are you going? Like, what do you mean? And he's like, Mom, I'm fine. I'll be out for a couple hours. I'll be back. Well, check in with me. You didn't download the Life 360 app. I need to know where you're going to go. And he's just like, you're too much. And I'll be fine. I know how to ride a bike. But again, there's that, how much can we control? How much can we not control? We just have to make sure that when we let go of that control as parents, we don't let it get our worries and our anxieties to a point where we're not healthy, right? Because it doesn't do our children any good. And again, that's an ongoing learning process for me as well. When that boy walks back in the door, I breathe a deep sigh of relief.
Yeah.
But he knows how to ride a bike.
Right.
And he's usually on the sidewalk, and he promised me he wouldn't have both of his earbuds in, and he has a cell phone on him that I can trace, right? So it's like, what are we doing here with this circle of control? We have to sort of open that circle up just a little bit, because with them having to be home, I feel like if we keep them in the house, closed in as much as possible, what we're going to release back into schools when they open back up, it's just going to be like opening up a big can of worms, a big Pandora's box.
The school counselors will be very busy.
Oh my goodness!
She's gonna need like 2 pair of tennis shoes before the end of the school year. Her and her assistant.
Yeah, I'm very blessed. I have a wide support network with my local county association, and we are always available to bounce ideas off of one another and decide how we're going to manage different situations. But I have to tell you, I've got a little bit of angst, a little bit of anxiety about what school will look like when we come back to school. Yeah. It'll be like, the first day of kindergarten again for everybody.
Right. It's funny you say that, because I know, and this, that's a lot of our the folks on Surviving Homeschool talk about the response they're getting from their students, which is, you don't teach this like my teacher. You don't do this like my teacher, does that. I imagine, in the same way, I don't want to talk to you. I wish, and in their mind saying, I wish my counselor was here, because, I can tell her this or him this, and so I'm curious. I want to share, I guess, that question from our group is, how much do we push them about their schoolwork? You mentioned, if they're not having a good day, but I'm saying, like, no, they have a bad attitude, and you play your video game, and you think this is vacation, and you imagine that you were supposed to be on spring break, and how much do we push those students?
Well, so here's the thing. My 12-year-old is within earshot, so I got to be really careful. But, if any of my colleagues happen to ever see this, they probably have my head on a platter. But I am a big proponent of giving kids a break. This is not, in most cases, advanced chemistry for someone in their residency that they need to pass in order to become a doctor.
Right.
It's the 3rd grade. If he takes an hour off to play the video game, or he takes an hour off to do his ELA instead of his math, what's the worst that can happen? The sky is not going to fall. That's their job, to push us. It's like they teach them that at kids' school. Okay, everybody, tomorrow test your mom, say something crazy, and then don't listen to her. They test us all the time. So I think it's important to remember there are times when I have to shut my door at work and take a break, because it's like a revolving door. The kids need a little bit of a break too. It's okay to let them, in most cases, it's okay to let them not do that assignment right now, but it needs to get done by, say, 4:00, or show it to me when it's done. They're going to try to play us. I know they're going to try to play us, but we got to stand strong. We can't let them win.
That's why we're banding together.
We got to like link arms and band together.
Yep.
But at the same time, we got to recognize their feelings, and they're giving us clues all the time, right? So when they were babies, what did those clues look like? It was crying, it was wiggling around because my diaper needed to be changed. And they can't always verbalize exactly what they mean in the ways that you and I would verbalize what we mean or what they want. It might come across as an attitude, but that attitude might be trying to tell you, I'm frustrated because I haven't seen my friends. I'm, anxious because 3 of my friends did a TikTok together, or they did a Zoom together and I wasn't invited. Or it might be, I don't want to do this work. Doesn't necessarily mean that I don't like the way that you teach. It might mean I'm struggling with this work and I don't feel as confident as I do when I'm in school and I have Billy next to me who helps me. They're trying to tell us something. And it's important for us to listen for those clues, just like when they were babies.
That's so helpful.
So Laura, maybe you could, how much, you have older boys, but how much should we be sharing with our children about like what's really happening with the virus?
That's a good question.
I mean, we, of course, we want to protect our kids, but in order for them to understand why we made these changes, like how much should we really be explaining to them?
I feel like, again, that depends on the child's age. With your 3-year-old, right? What you say to him is perfect. You could get sick right now if you go outside, and I don't want you to get sick. I want to keep you healthy. So we're going to stay closer to home. With kids who are 16 and 17, there's almost no keeping it from them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they want to have an open conversation about it, I'm more than willing. If I could get into that bedroom and see what's going on with my kid, who, again, I haven't seen since Monday. I think he came down the stairs a little while ago. But, and they sometimes teach us things at that age. Oh, well, this is what I heard, or this is what my teacher said, or, well, and that's a good opportunity when they bring that to you to either correct it or say, oh, I didn't know that. Tell me more about it. I don't remember what it was, but Ozias had told me something the other day about everything that's going on with the virus, and I didn't know. Whatever it was that he said, I didn't know. So he taught me something that he had learned from his teacher. But I really think that with kids ages 10 and under, especially know your child, because if you share too much with the child who's always nervous about other things, you don't want this to snowball into, something that you're going to have a bigger problem with when Corona goes away. Not if, but when it goes away.
So you're telling me that I can't tell my anxious 8-year-old that we are rationing food because there's none in the grocery stores?
I didn't say that. Disclaimer, I didn't say what you could or couldn't say to him.
That would make a child anxious, saying there's no food, so we're rationing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't tell him that. I would just tell him we're being careful right now because it's hard to go to the store. And it's so funny that you say that, because I was talking to both my kids and my husband are extremely low key. I am not. I am very high strung. And I was looking at the pantry and I'm thinking out loud. I said, I don't know if we have enough food here for 2 weeks. And Ozias said, well, I guess we'll just have to ration it. And he was so okay with it, and he was so calm with it. Maybe he learned that at school. Maybe he learned that, I don't know, from one of his peers. But he was so completely okay with, maybe we'll just have to ration it. Mm-hmm. Just know your kid. And to that point, I probably shouldn't have been thinking out loud about whether or not we have enough food, because I could have potentially given him some worry and anxiety about it, right? So
yeah.
How much we share depends on our kid. And it's also, I think, a matter of responsibility. It was a little irresponsible of me to be worrying out loud.
Shelly says that her next door neighbor told her kids that this is the beginning of The Walking Dead. And now her middle child is looking for zombies.
Why?
That's the meme in of itself.
Shelly, don't go to their Christmas party. Don't take your kids over there. That's not good. I mean, I would hope that the parent was joking and they have a really fun household, but
can't do that with kids.
I am no expert. Listen, far be it for me to tell a parent how to parent their child, but can I just tell you as a school counselor, please don't tell your children this is The Walking Dead and there's zombies out there. That's not what's going on. It's a germ that is spread through droplets. And when you touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, or any open orifice on your body, usually your face, you're going to get the germ and you're going to probably get the virus. The people who are at most risk, from what I'm hearing, are the very elderly, those who are immunocompromised, and the very young. So we just have to protect them, and we have to constantly wash our hands. Not excessively, got to be careful with that, but telling your children that this is The Walking Dead is just like one of those things. No.
She said that it was an 8-year-old. So this is 8-year-olds teaching 8-year-olds, or 8-year-olds teaching, teaching children. So, right. So when you have the neighborhood kid sharing, it's like them sharing.
It was a neighborhood kid. Okay.
Neighborhood kid. It's like them talking about, that it's no Santa. Like the neighborhood kid is passing information, which of course, they know everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So again, Shelly, don't go to their Christmas party. Keep your kids away from those people. No, seriously, just like with anything else, you correct it, right? When your kid comes home off the bus and says, so-and-so said that babies come from the stork. If it's a 5-year-old, you may not want to tell them exactly how it happens, but if it's a 12 or 13-year-old, that might be something we need to correct.
Absolutely. I want to look at your last point. It's been an hour already, Dee. Look, we're having fun.
Yeah, we keep going over an hour.
I know. Okay. We're going to do this one, though, because I think it's important to talk about this, because it's also a very difficult thing to do, which is in this time to turn off the phone. So for many reasons, turning off the phone could bring up anxiety. I need to know what's happening. I need, on the other side, like every time I look at this, I see what's happening, and it brings up more anxiety. Or, in my children's case, they Google things and they look at things, and my 9-year-old came back to your point about with information that she had read that was true. And so, I'd love for you just to talk about just the importance of turning those phones off.
Yeah, it's so, we are all, whether we want to admit it or not, we are addicted to our phones. My phone is right here. It's a mini computer at your fingertips, right? And anything you need to know, you can get it within seconds. And that's really a blessing. But it can also be a curse when you're texting and you're looking down at your phone. It's also not physically healthy for you too, because you're damaging your neck, you're damaging your wrists and your fingers, but we all do it. But if you can just sort of put that in your bank of coping skills and calming strategies, if every time you're going to that phone and somebody ticks you off on social media, or every time you go to that phone, you hear something about a new hoax or something new that's untrue about coronavirus, and you can recognize that it's causing you more stress and anxiety, you need to get rid of it. If you had a friend in your life who every time you spent time with them, there was an argument, eventually you'd get rid of that friend, or you'd stop spending as much time with that friend. We have to do the same thing with our phones. I am really guilty of scrolling through my social media and, oh my gosh, it is 12:30. I need to get into bed. I have somewhere to go tomorrow. And with everything closing with school and work, the past few nights, I have been up later than usual. But once I go to bed, I'm not even leaving it on, because a text message will come through, and what happens? It lights up, right? Which is waking you up. And that screen is just not letting you sleep well. So turning it off until you wake up the next day is healthy, in my opinion. Plus, my husband leaves his phone on all night. So if there's an emergency,
They know how to get
somebody call my husband. Now, obviously, that's not feasible for every parent. There are some single parents, but there are phone settings that we can use to silence our phones unless there's an emergency. Or silence your phone, or tell everybody that you're turning your phone off. Call my house phone if there's an emergency. There's a way around it. What'd you say?
I said house phones. People have
Yeah,
those.
I have one. Let me give you the number.
I still have a house phone. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it in your house.
Yeah, but it's a difficult thing to do. Believe me. I got up, I think it was Tuesday, and my husband was like, "How'd you sleep? How are you feeling? You're kind of cranky." And I was like, "I didn't go to sleep till 4." He says, "Why?" I was like, "Well, I was up watching Love and Hip Hop on my phone until 4 o'clock in the morning." I will not be doing that again. I will not be doing that again. So then the next night and the next night and tonight, this phone is going off at a set time. Also, I wanted to point out, speaking of phones, that if you insist on being on your phone, there is a really amazing app called the Calm app.
I have
don't
it.
know if you guys see that, right? So Calm, where is it? There it is very helpful in helping people go to sleep. And there are, I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah.
But there are some really amazing mindfulness activities on the Calm app. And it also gives me a notification of when to turn off my phone and start cooling down for the night.
Oh, wow. It does that.
Pardon?
The app does that.
The app, you can set the app to do that for you.
Okay. I knew it could wake you up gently. I didn't know it had a component that could calm you, bring you down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can. It's been really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So is that all of our questions that we had prepared?
No, I probably have like 50 more, but I appreciate you. We could be here all night talking.
We gotta let Laura go so she can eat her burger.
She got to eat her burger, yes.
Yeah.
We want to thank you a lot, Laura, for your volunteering your time for all of us surviving homeschool parents. How can you actually don't you have an Instagram? Was it at Fancy Counselor or something if they want to follow?
I do. I have 2 Instagram accounts, but my account for my businesses is it's at The Fancy Counselor, all one word, just like any other Instagram. And the spellings are the regular spellings, at The Fancy Counselor.
So they can follow you and see some of the posts you're doing regarding this topic. Yeah.
And so I'd be interested in hearing what some of the other school counselors think about our talk tonight. And like I said, the counseling department should have counseling department of surviving homeschool should have a staff meeting. But I'm really interested to talk to some of the people who might be licensed therapists and social workers and get some of their ideas about what we talked about, because they are a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge, especially our school psychologists. And if we can just sort of put our heads together and come up with maybe a list of key coping strategies that we can share out with surviving homeschool, that will be helpful to all of us.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and if we can find time, we could even break it down by age group or break it down by, some children have special needs, and some coping strategies don't always work for everybody. I have a little friend who is autistic, and some of the things that I teach my little friend, he's just like, "You're crazy. I'm not going to do that." It's one of my favorite kids to work with. But, when we bounce ideas off of one another, when we bring in the school counselors, the social workers, the school psychologists, and the licensed therapists, we have such a wealth of information to share with each other.
We would really appreciate that.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I was really honored when you guys texted me to come on to the Facebook Live. I was like,
you were our first counselor volunteer. So thanks for volunteering. So
we appreciate you.
In closing, I wanted to say, we titled this talk Survival Mode. And most of us are familiar with the adaptation theory or survival of the fittest theory, Darwinism, which is pretty much an organism's ability to adapt to changes in its environment and adjust accordingly over time. So we are definitely capable of adapting to this change if we just use some of those coping skills that you actually mentioned and taught us about today, and just take a deep breath as we're going through the change and accept the change and just adapt. Humans are fascinating creatures, and we will all get through this and we will survive homeschooling all together.
Yes. Yes, we will. And so just one final thought, we all just want to make sure that we are not constantly in survival mode, right? Because your brain, what we don't want is we don't want our brains in survival mode all the time, because that's when we start to constantly have a fast fast beating heart, and you're constantly having, shortness of breath. And that has really, really deep impacts on your physical health over time. So we're all surviving homeschool right now, but just make sure your body and your mental wellness is not constantly in survival mode. Use your coping skills, your calming strategies. Download the Calm app, color some mandalas, get outside, drink some wine if you're 21 or over, and connect with your friends on Zoom and Facebook Live and all that other good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Yes.
Yes, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Talk later. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.